right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So excited to be here to moderate this talk. My name is Melissa Coakley. I'm a longtime member of TLDC and a huge fan. Um, and I'm here with Lewis and Dr. Esther Jackson, who's doing a session on navigating the future with AI for adaptive personalized experiences and assessment. And this is a topic that I love. I'm so passionate about it. And speaking to Dr. Jackson before the session, I can't wait to hear more about everything we were chatting about. So I'll just do an introduction and then we'll get into it. As the head of LinJack Consulting and a college instructor, Dr. Esther Jackson specializes in adaptability, diversity, emotional intelligence, and leadership. She's presented at national conferences such as ATD ICE, Bamboo HR, SHRM, and Training Magazine. Her literary work includes numerous articles and the book Adaptability in Talent Development. Dr. Jackson holds degrees in education and certifications in AQ Foundations and as a certified diversity executive. So turning the floor over to you, Dr. Jackson, and I'll be keeping an eye on the chat, so please feel free to put any questions in there.
Thanks, Melissa. Hello, everyone. Certainly an honor to be here joining you all to talk about this buzzing topic, AI, which is bombarding our lives, but it's bringing some awesome nuances. So, looking forward to getting into that and talking about not only some of the challenges, but also benefits, along with trying to find out a few things surrounding one, how we can really explain the evolution of the L&D role. Two, discovering some ways to leverage AI tools. Would love for you all to share in the chat what you have going on, where you are with AI now, if you're just keeping it on the radar, if you are flying pretty high with AI and ready to show those measurables, or if you are one who's with an organization where, nope, not ready to test the waters yet. We still need to see a little bit more and find out what's going on with others. Let us know in the chat where you are in your AI journey in your organization. And then finally, we are getting into recognizing some actionable steps for L&D to prepare for the future of work. So a few things I'd like us to get into and make it worth your while in a short period of time we have. As we take a look here, I'd like to launch us into a short segment that I do in some of my presentations, Fact or Fib. I will simply display a statement, and the goal will be for you to think of an answer that you feel it's a fact or you feel the statement is a fib, not factual. So we will get into the first one. And you can just let us know in the chat what your thoughts are. If you feel the statement that displays is a fact or if you feel it is a fib. First one, sample here, more than 50% of employees want their employer to provide formal AI training. And Melissa, what I did not think about is since we are in the PDF mode, the answers are going to display for them. So they will have the answers there.
Yeah, I was going to say the source is really convincing.
And what I'd like to know is let us know in the chat. Do you feel like that is something that is true for your organization or it is not true for your organization? Let us know in the chat. Do you think this stat here applies to your organization or not? And we'll give it a few seconds before we ask about those results. More than 50% of employees want their employer to provide formal AI training. Does that apply to your organization or would you say no? All right, I'm seeing a couple of trues here and a no and a mix. All right, thank you all for that. We're going to keep it moving to this next one. Leadership and critical thinking are examples of power skills, but emotional intelligence and adaptability are not. And that's according to the Project Management Institute. There's some other sources on that. I just included one here. And the thought is that some of us may not be aware of when it comes to soft skills. That is also an area where we're finding that technology can be leveraged. Artificial intelligence is one that we are seeing some organizations take hold and incorporate in the learning strategy. So, those are some things we're going to talk about. And the soft skills are, in particular, now often referenced as power skills. If you want to get technical, there are certain skills that stand up above the others as skills that really speak to one's ability to be success. And that's how they view the power skills. So we're talking about things listed here like the leadership, the critical thinking, the emotional intelligence, the analytical skills. So with that, nice job. And we don't get the bedazzle with the confetti and everything in this mode, but pats on the back for you all. So we're going to get into how the L&D role has evolved. And as we look at some of the ways it's evolved, one is with being a strategic partner. And what we're talking about here is with learning and development, not every organization takes the necessary steps to build the relationships with your internal stakeholders, with those clients, internal customers that you may service. And what we're talking about with that strategic partnering and building a relationship is taking a time as the learning and development team to find out from your business department leads what keeps them up at night. What are the pain points? What are their challenges? What's a priority for them? For us in L&D, sometimes it can be easy to get caught in our own silos and, well, we heard something through the grapevine, or there's something new that has come out, and that's what we want to add to the learning portfolio. That's what we want to place in our list of learning offerings. Rather than tapping into, have we asked the question? Have we built the relationship to find out what steps need to be taken? Have we tapped into how we can make them a champion through our influence, through them recognizing that we're showing some interest, appreciation, as well as that desire to want to connect? What the strategy is for learning to actual business outcomes, and in particular, understanding their business priorities as well as the needs of their staff for their particular business teams. So that's what we're talking about with the strategic partnering. Two, incorporating technology, another way that we're seeing the need for learning and development to step it up. On a scale of 1 to 5, if you had to rate how your team is doing when it comes to leveraging technology in any way, not just AI, but any kind of technology when it comes to your learning initiatives and your learning offerings, how would you rate yourselves? 1 being on the low end, 5 being on the high end. How is your learning and development team when it comes to incorporating technology? Let us know in the chat. So for incorporating technology, that's going to be things such as, are we having opportunities where participants are able to maybe do a Kahoot when it comes to a quiz, when it comes to that knowledge check? Are we offering hybrid learning opportunities where we have individuals who are remote and they are still able to participate while we also have face to face? Do we have virtual learning opportunities, such as what we are in right now, where we are catering to remote audiences? And so, a few different things we're talking about here. Do we have the ability as well as take advantage of those instances where we want to get real time feedback quickly after a learning experience? So, we have a QR code that people are simply able to scan at the end of a program before they leave, So we can maybe test the research that shows us, hey, you're doing really well if you get 30% of attendees to respond to that evaluation or that smiley sheet. How about making it easier where it's shorter, it's quicker, and maybe with a few clicks, folks are able to respond and provide that real time feedback? Tons of ways to incorporate technology, and we'll get into more shortly. Measuring impact. Another way the learning and development role has evolved because there's greater expectation, more accountability with how are we speaking to the return on investment? How are we showing learning impact? Taking it beyond the level 3 in Kirkpatrick's levels of evaluation, and even taking it into Phillips level 5, that return on investment. So when we talk about level 4 of Kirkpatrick's levels of evaluation, many of you know we're talking about looking at how is it impacting the business, whatever that technology we incorporated in the training, whatever the training program was, when we had folks who took off from work to engage in that learning experience, what was the benefit to the business? But taking it to the next level is what's the return on investment? When we look at the expense of them being away from the job, the expense of the learning technology that was used, the learning staff, all of that has a cost. The software, the authoring tools that were leveraged for the e learning that was created. And that takes some science, that takes someone with some skill and some time to speak to that. Well, the excuses are going out the window now because how are we leveraging technology to help us do that easier, to help us with the automation that can easily be put in place to do those calculations and get us that information where we are proving our reason for existence as the learning team. So that's 3. 4, integrated talent management, something that is coming up now where we are talking about how is the L&D role connecting the dots? How are we tapping into that talent shortage that we're seeing now and experiencing now? There's that fight, that demand, that race and competition for top talent. We're hearing about it everywhere. We're hearing from the World Economic Forum, from SHRM, from McKinsey reports. In the next 5 years, there will be a shortage of talents. In the next 5 years, 40 to 70% of skills today will be outdated and there won't be a use. There will be a need for updated skills. So we're experiencing and hearing and reading all kinds of stats that speak to we need to get on top of it now. So with integrated talent management, we're talking about if we look at the whole employee life cycle from recruitment, the hiring, the onboarding, the retention, looking at what's happening with the skills on the job, performance reviews, all the way to exit reviews. What are those opportunities for learning and development to have not only a seat at the table, but have that initiative put in place where you are connecting it to what can be done? How are we scaling up recruiters? How are we assisting them when it comes to ensuring there's not a bias? Taking steps to look at how we recruit for diverse staff. How are we tapping into the onboarding process and taking time to build human connections? Allow for AI where we have the ability to have the automated efficiencies help us out and then provide the human interaction and put more effort in that where we can leverage technology where so much human effort isn't needed. So being able to connect all of those and have learning and development be the coordination point in between to ensure alignment, that's another way where we're seeing the role of L&D evolve. 5, promoting DEI. We're talking about not just what folks look like. Are you okay with folks who don't look like you, aren't the same color as you, aren't the same age as you? Diversity, equity, and inclusion is also talking about how do we work together when we're not together, when we are remote in different places, when there are language barriers, when there's some issues with accessibility. How are we looking at the imbalance when it comes to some people may have access to certain materials, certain opportunities, and we want to ensure there's not a disparity when it comes to challenges for another group of people, whether it be because of location, whether it be because of the access that's limited due to technology not being provided. All of that is promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. How are we scaling up leadership to be able to lead and manage teams where they may have a group of folks who are hybrid, some who are in the office, some who are virtual, and some who they may not see it as often, but we want to ensure that leadership has consistency across the board and leaders are prepared in terms of soft skills and technical skills. Again, that speaks to promoting DEI. And then finally, how we see L&D evolving is looking at we have to step it up with the data. And the technology, AI, can certainly help us with that when it comes to the big data, when it comes to how are we recognizing skills gaps? How are we tapping into the learning that can address those skills gaps? And then how are we helping learners to help themselves in terms of making the learning materials, the learning solutions available on demand when they need it in real time? Melissa, I'm going to take a moment here to see if we have any questions or comments we want to address.
I actually have a question myself. Well, people, if you have a question in mind, go ahead and type it in the chat and I'll pass it along to Esther. But I wanted to ask you about leveraging data analytics, which is something I think that is so useful and that we talk about so much. And that in my experience, I feel like we drop the ball a lot there. So it looks like AI would be sort of perfect for this, that it takes a lot of the burden and a lot of the what you need to know to analyze the data off of us and helps with the heavy lifting. Like, do you think that's the case, or are there other obstacles?
That's absolutely the case, and there are absolutely other obstacles as well. When we think in terms of leveraging data analytics, an initial question to ask, I love going back to Simon Sinek's Start with Why. Why do we need the data? What is it that we're trying to do? Data tells a story, and you may read often that data can tell any story you want it to tell, which is so true. And
Yeah.
so, in reading the data, we want to go deeper. We want to take it to another level and look at who are the folks internally in our organizations who have that access to the warehouse of data that we need. So when we understand the why and the what, we're talking about essentially maybe data on what the skills gaps are. Well, in order to know what the skills gaps are, do we know what the needs are? Do we know what kind of work they're doing in the jobs? Have we taken time to have those relationships where we're having the conversations with the business area leaders that speaks to what is needed for the workforce planning? That goes back to number 4, the integrated talent management. Also, with leveraging data, we are talking about maybe steps to be taken with the folks we have in our workforce. Traditionalists, do we still have folks who have not retired and they're in the veteran or traditionalist age group? Do we have baby boomers? And one of the things I did was for my dissertation, I actually did a study on technology preferences for multiple generations in the workplace. And interestingly enough, I happened to finish my dissertation before COVID. And I believe my results would have significantly been different after COVID. So right now, we have more than 4 generations in the workplace. So beyond the traditionalists, the baby boomers, Gen Xers, we have millennials, we have Gen Z, we have Alpha. What are we doing to address the needs concerning identifying one, who's represented? What are the numbers? What are the roles they're in? There's data on that. We can get that from HR. There's data on the technology that we currently have and the technology we want to pull in. Let's talk to IT. There's data on how we go about marketing to our external customers and the steps we need to take. Well, let's look at the skills that we're incorporating in the learning programs. Are we having conversations with marketing? So much to inform that. And then if we bring it home, looking at who's attending our trainings, what are their completion rates?
Mhm.
Are there assessments involved? What do those assessment results look like? And if we have folks who are skilled when it comes to the data science, or we have folks who are skilled when it comes to, hey, we're leveraging Power BI, Power Business Intelligence. We just need the folks who have the skills when it comes to how to leverage that technology. Or we're using Tableau to quickly give us the turnaround with that data that we need to be able to pick up on those patterns so we can make more informed decisions when it comes to our learning offerings and where we tap in. So, great question. And I hope that answered the question, Melissa.
Yes, thank you. That was great. And then just one more thing, a comment that Gabriella Fenton made about when you asked about how people are approaching AI training. Gabriella said, it's interesting for us. People say they want AI training, but then when the training comes up, there's little to no engagement with it, which I've seen that happen as well. Can you speak to that? Have you seen that before? Is this typical? Is there an obvious explanation?
That is typical. And Gabrielle, that's such a valid point. I would actually say that when we think about it, a few questions that come to mind, especially for me when I'm working with clients and I encounter something similar when they're saying, hey, Esther, we really need to lean in and address this issue with we don't have people who are taking time to attend our trainings, or there's disparity when it comes to certain learning topics. Some of the other teaching that I do is with ATD, the Association for Talent Development. And one of the programs I do is a certificate program dealing with managing learning programs, where we talk about, do you have a learning strategy? No, we're not talking about the organization's business strategy. We're talking about the learning strategy, which needs to be aligned to the organization's business strategy. And within that learning strategy, how do you discuss marketing? Maybe it's the 4 P's of marketing. How are you addressing the marketing approach so that people recognize what's in it for me? It's wonderful to be able to put a program out there. You send a flyer, you Slack it, you have the wonderful page on the website, on your intranet. Come to our new training. We have so and so. But some steps that tend to be overlooked are, what's in it for me? What's in it for the learner? How is it going to make their life easier? How is it going to help them to do their job better? How is this
And
going to set them up for success for the next promotional opportunity? So, a few missing pieces that can assist us with the no shows, the cancellations, or that disparity between we have this number of folks who've registered, and then we have such a small number of folks who have actually showed up for the training.
yeah. And really quick, you mentioned the 4 P's of marketing. I'm sure I used to know what they were, but can you remind us really quick?
Sure. And before I do, I love teachable moments. So I'd like to poll the audience and see who can tell us before I start rattling off answers. 4 P's of marketing. Can we make it a group effort? Let us know in the chat.
I know I heard this on a podcast like 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought, oh, I should remember that. And yes.
All right. People is one. Not seeing anything come in. Another is product. People, product. I gave 2 answers. Let's see if anyone comes in to help me out.
Promotion.
Prom-
TR said it too.
Placement. Yes. Thank you, Melissa. Placement is one another. So people, product, placement, and there's one more. Marketing. Marketing. What tends to come to mind with marketing? So show me the money. Pricing. Pricing is the other P.
Pricing.
Pricing. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks for the question, Melissa. Yes. So people, product, placement, pricing. 4 P's of marketing. And those are things I highly encourage folks to address in a learning strategy. You need to have a section that deals with how do we market our learning initiatives and learning opportunities. Great question. So as we look at how it's evolved, we're also getting into, hey, let's take time to understand what trends we've seen with learning and development. Between 1990 and 2000, we were introduced to computer based training. We saw the popularization of the learning management system, that learning wheelhouse where it's going to house our courses. People can register through this, it'll track this information and completion and all of that. Maybe even people can go to the LMS, pull a transcript, be able to see what they've completed. So, few pieces there really take us to the next level when it came to what we were doing in the learning space. As well as we saw platforms taking off for us with online learning becoming popular and more useful to us, along with leveraging social media and platforms such as SharePoint, Slack, Teams. So, not only for collaboration, but we were also leveraging those things for our knowledge management, for storing our learning materials, as well as we're still using a lot of them even for collaboration. 2000 to 2010, gamification. How do we make it fun? How do we tap into the needs of some learners? Maybe when it comes to the disc behaviors, and we have some who need to be competitive. We have some we want to cater to this particular behavior style and others. We were also getting into micro learning becoming more prevalent, along with the webinars. We know when we were getting into the initial launch of online learning, that led to being able to tap into people who are not all in the same space. So webinars picked up pretty much there. Yes, we saw them take off in all kinds of directions around COVID, but well before COVID, over a decade before COVID, we saw webinars being popularized. 2010 to 2020, cloud computing, data analytics. Couldn't hear enough about big data. Also, being able to get into what are some nuances when it comes to the learner's experience and how we make it engaging, how we attract them, how we maintain their attention. What steps are we taking when it comes to that interaction, as well as them being able to be engaged to a point? Maybe there's also follow up. There are things that they're doing to provide hands on. All of that speaks to the learning experience, as well as we saw the elevation of attention given to virtual reality and augmented reality. And Melissa, I cannot get enough with Kahoot. So if you are not using Kahoot or something comparable, you all are missing out. AI can tell you all kinds of alternatives if those are not your speed or cup of tea. So AI is my bestie, and it helps me to identify a lot of the resource tools that maybe I'm not familiar with or want to tap into or want to research. So have to love that. And brings us to now, 2020 to 2030. What have we seen? Not everything, but a few things. We are seeing AI take us to another level, and that rapid pace of technology. Louise said, Melissa and I, just before this session, we're talking about how quickly things are changing, and it could be so overwhelming for us as L&D professionals. Well, just think about our learners. We want to make all the resources available to them. That can sometimes be overwhelming. And we have more advancement with tools such as Mural, Zoom, Mentimeter, Trello. So many things allowing us to be more advanced, to have more efficiency. In the process, though, how do we find that right balance so it's not death by technology and you still take advantage of the human interactions? So would love to know If anyone has taken steps in your learning strategy or the way you approach incorporating technology so you can account for finding the right balance. Anyone doing something along those lines to find the right balance between technology and human interaction? Let us know in the chat. A couple of approaches to consider. One would be certainly we cannot overlook the importance of getting feedback from the target audience, from your learners, finding out what they want, how they best learn. Another step to take would be to recognize where you've seen benefits, where you've seen success, where you've seen some challenges, and past steps taken within your learning and development strategy. And so, how are you learning from what's been done previously? Okay, we have a few folks sharing in the chat here. Someone has said balance is hard, like adding elements of social learning, a Slack channel, or something that people in a program can interact on. Thanks for that, Melissa. Uh, Automation with class invites and utilizing templates using Chat GPT. So, certainly can appreciate when you take opportunities to maybe sprinkle in so it's not so overwhelming, and consider how you can maybe have a decent spread. Three key points or three key areas of opportunity to tap in and engage your learner before the learning event, during the learning event, after the learning event. And how can you look at those opportunities to maybe have a spread and how you sprinkle in the technology in those instances before the learning event? What are you doing to help activate prior knowledge to get them ready? How can artificial intelligence or another technology help you with that? When it comes to during the event, a lot of things to cover there. But after the event, what are you doing for assisting maybe what we hear about with the drip method? So you keep the reinforcement going. Another way to leverage AI. How are you following up to get their feedback as well as maybe also provide resources and recommendations to the learner's leader so they can assist with the reinforcement back on the job? So, again, steps that can be taken there. Few stats here. 85 million represents jobs going unfilled by 2030 due to the talent shortage. 86% represents workers who say they need AI upskilling. And that's according to Korn Ferry. And then finally, employees who report getting AI training. That is at 14%. However, with the more than, I believe it was around more than 3 million, according to a study by Josh Burson and Associates, report they have that shows that over 3 million is what's estimated to be the investment that organizations are looking to make in the next couple of years when it comes to artificial intelligence training and the work being done in that area. So, a few things to really emphasize the importance in what we're seeing and taking time, as well as putting into action whatever execution plan that we want when it comes to navigating the future for technology. How can AI assist with adaptive experiences? So, one thing I want to share here, when we think about an adaptive learning experience, essentially what we're talking about is where you have that learning experience that's going to adjust and in real time cater to the needs of the learner, whether it be because it's responding to real time feedback. Maybe the learner responds to something, they enter something, they take an assessment, and there's constant adjustment so that it's catering to the learner's needs. So, one example of what's been done, Deloitte is doing something similar, and they are leveraging AI when it comes to Deloitte University. Anyone have an example of how you feel your organization or another organization you've heard about or read about is incorporating AI for an adaptive learning experience? Shannon has shared we've explored donut journeys. You had me at donut, Shannon. I have no idea what that is, but I'm stuck on donut. Donut journeys through Slack for automated follow up to participants and their leader. Wonderful. That sounds like that really gets to going in the direction of level 3 of Kirkpatrick's levels of evaluation. Because it's one thing when they show us that they get it and they have the knowledge, they're able to apply it when they're in the learning event. It's another thing to look to see, is it transferring back for on the job application, that level 3. Tidy closed language learning models like Arista can be used, or on demand learning that is customized based on us. Yes, thank you for sharing that. Great example there. Let's talk about how can you leverage AI for personalized learning. So different, slightly distinguished from adaptive learning. When we talk about personalized learning, we're essentially talking about a learning experience or learning effort with technology that has been designed based on certain information, characteristics, details about the learner. So that is what makes it personalized. It's customized just to the learner. And couple of examples here. Amazon, they use chatbots and personalized learning content that they have available through their Amazon Web Services for their team members. And then PwC, they use AI to enhance their learning platforms, and it offers personalized learning experiences that are also adaptive to employee skill levels. Now, with the personalized training, what's really going to be key in coming years, one of the challenges that we're seeing for HR and L&D is really in the area of internal mobility. How are you drawing top talent by letting them see transparently that you have ways for them to move up in the company? It's not a secret. They don't have to dig and try to figure out how do they advance. And then also with the transparency of the internal mobility, you also make it apparent what types of training, learning opportunities are in place to help with that career development so that they can advance. That personalized learning capability with technology is going to be key to that. Another way that L&D is tapping into how we target the top talent pipeline, how we are assisting when it comes to recruitment, as well as how we are helping when it comes to internal mobility and retention. How we're keeping the folks we already have. Emma creating a curated chatbot for a program to assist throughout and take some weight off of facilitators if the program involves live interaction. Good stuff, Emma. Thank you for that example. LinkedIn Learning. Thanks, Max. That is also in itself, there is an example that Max has here. Appreciate that with the use of LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning itself, in some ways, is an example of, you can say, an adaptive learning experience, depending on what feature of LinkedIn Learning someone is using. If they have a certain plan or package that has some of the added features, it's definitely something that would be an example of the personalized training or personalized learning path. Thanks for sharing that. Let's get into the final thought here before an activity item I want to share with you. Ways AI can help with smarter assessments. Essentially, what we're dealing with here, we've really kind of touched on them already with how do we leverage AI maybe to get that quick survey evaluation, what the learner thought about the learning experience, as well as maybe digging into real quickly some information along the lines of data analytics on the learning experiences. What patterns are we seeing with maybe the individuals who are attending our trainings? The individuals maybe are from a certain business area. Let's dig into why we're getting more response from one business area versus another. Let's talk to the leadership. Let's talk to the individuals. Let's look at the type of work that they are completing on the job compared to the type of program offerings we have. And that's going to take us back to having those key conversations with the stakeholders, our business partners, to who are the ones who are recipients of our L&D services. General Electric, they have an example of where they are leveraging AI for smarter assessments, and they use AI-driven learning solutions for upskilling through predicting skill gaps. So they leverage it to look at those skill gaps. And that's another way we can make our assessments smarter by not only looking at the here and now, but uploading some of the past data and having some analytics come out when it comes to what has happened we look at the skills, how they have changed for people in certain roles, for certain tasks that have to be completed. So that's going to take us into the direction of looking at maybe how we can also leverage AI when it comes to conducting a job analysis or a task analysis and partnering with HR so we can better meet the needs of job roles, tasks that are completed, and have that addressed in our learning solutions. Any questions, Melissa, comments that we want to address before I get to this next activity? Want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
No, a lot of interesting comments and things I'm definitely going to Google later, like that donut add-on for Slack.
Google and AI it. So we have a new verb to add to our parts of speech. So we turned Google into a verb. So Google is now our verb, our noun. AI, I feel like it's going in the same direction. Noun and a verb. So we have a short activity here. Question for you. Situation is your senior leader asks what the L&D team is doing to make AI a part of the learning strategy. What do you say? What is your L&D team doing to make AI a part of the learning strategy? What do you say? And we're not accepting the answer, ask my boss. Yes, Melissa, and it was intended to be a loaded question. We can go in all kinds of directions with this one. And it's interesting you should say, Melissa, it depends on the company culture because that is actually something that I'm going to touch on the next slide. So you're absolutely correct. We'll give it a few more seconds.
I say maybe I think I scared everyone else from answering the question by saying it was loaded.
But yeah, well, there could be all kinds of answers for it. So
I think it's one of those questions that makes you want to ask 10 more questions as your answer, right?
Yes, and that's a good thing. And the reason that is a good thing is you'll see on the next slide.
Oh, lots of answers here.
All right, Gabriella, our first step is finding ways to automate our processes and asking our work more efficient. Okay, how we can make our work more efficient. I am right with you, Gabriella. Absolutely. This is our internal ways of working within L&D. Absolutely. Love where you're going with that, Gabriella. Shining and offering prompt guidance, both general and specific, to each training topic to enable folks to use internally approved AI tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, or Copilot. Shannon, loaded answer. Love this. Shining head on both general and specific, and looking at how we step it up to enable the folks and keywords here, approved AI tools, approved AI tools. So we could do a whole other session, whole conference actually on the data security, the privacy and data security aspect, confidentiality, and how we use AI ethically and professionally. So much into that. Thank you very much for sharing that. Quite a few things you all have coming in. Appreciate this. Emma, as a team, I'm on the first step, and the strategy is to start playing around with it ourselves. And I highly encourage that, with safeguards, of course, like we just mentioned. But definitely, you want to give yourself some exposure, some practice. We already get access, and we already have exposure and some experience when it comes to AI in our personal lives. It's forced on us. Yes, every time Netflix tries to force me to watch these movies just because it use algorithms to look at what I already watched, no, that's not what I want to watch, Netflix. But just simple things like that, some of our banking transactions online, certain things that have us exposed to those instances where we are interacting with AI, the virtual assistants, the chat box. How about thinking about things like that when it comes to how we are addressing the needs of our learners? A virtual assistant, a virtual coach, maybe an AI assistant to help learners be able to target what learning opportunities, learning initiatives in the program offerings are available and going to meet their needs. So, pretty much along the same lines of what you all entered in the chat. Thank you so much for what you shared. Few questions. So, going back to what Melissa mentioned, taking a look at a few things that you want to answer when it comes to being able to respond to leadership about how AI fits in your strategy. Do we have a strategy, first of all? Are we taking steps to ensure our learning and development strategy is in alignment with the business strategy, the whole organization strategy? Do we have an understanding of what AI is? I wouldn't necessarily say that you need to understand all of AI's capabilities, because I don't know if that's possible, because it keeps changing and there's so much, it keeps evolving. But at least, do we recognize, one, the need for a strategy, the need for our strategy to connect to the business strategy, and then some of the challenges. Someone mentioned earlier about the challenges, the roadblocks that we may have. And I mentioned about having conversations with your business partners, with those whom you are providing L&D services, to understand what their challenges are and looking to address those needs when it comes to AI capability and incorporating that in your learning. So, going back to something else Melissa mentioned, understanding about your company's culture, one thing in particular, what's the risk tolerance or the technology readiness? And that the program I mentioned that I do with the ATD certificate, one of the things we deal with is, before you launch into making that proposal to your leadership, to your senior leaders about this new technology or this new program, software you want to purchase for AI, take a look at what is the current state of technology with your organization. How does your organization respond to change? How does the workforce respond to change? Is it something every time the new shiny object comes out, you jump on the bandwagon? Are you leery? So, what's that adaptability quotient? That's what I'm talking about there, for not the individuals, but for the organization as a whole. What's the adaptability quotient when it comes to your learning team? Those are some things to consider, because they also speak to how quickly or how challenging it will be for the organization, for team members, for even the learning team to adapt. excuse me, to adopt the new technology, to adopt the AI, to adopt what's being proposed. And also, it speaks to how people are encouraged or discouraged from stepping out there and trying something new without fear of being reprimanded or getting that pat on the hand. Or what were you thinking when you did that? So that speaks along those lines as well. What is your company's tech adoption readiness? Ties into the AQ that we're talking about there. And you also want to ensure you're having the appropriate conversations with IT. Is there something that will need to interface? Are we talking about something that requires heightened security that works in tandem with what is already in place for firewalls, for security measures, for training? Or is it something that needs to be taken to another level and maybe a whole other suite of programs that the L&D team needs to look at offering when it comes to data security, ethical behavior with the use of certain technologies? How do we integrate that balance? We've talked about that throughout the presentation. How does the learning team stay informed? Are you attending programs like this? Are you taking it back to the rest of your learning team? Are you involved with professional associations where they have regular sharing of best practices and keep you abreast as to those learning trends? So, just a few questions that can assist you when it comes to the steps to be taken with your L&D strategy, as well as potentially responding to questions like the one we had on the previous slide. One thought I wanted to leave with you, this is something that came out of a program I did a couple of years ago. There were some questions addressed to me by a few participants, and I shared with them, here's the deal. We need to do what we can to learn what all we can about our business, about what it is our organization does, who they serve, and how they do the business. Because when I learn the business, I learn the need, what that learning need is. And when I learn the need, I've learned my business, which is learning, and I can better serve the folks who are recipients of the services. So when I learn the business, I learn the need. When I learn the need, I've learned my business. For your takeaways, encourage you to consider these few things as well as share them with your team. Talked about the strategy, having one for L&D. And with the strategy, we're essentially talking about understanding what the goals are for the learning team in relation to the organization, and then what are steps to take to get us there? What's that roadmap to lead us to success at a high level? Build your curation skills. How are you going about taking steps to look at what learning programs, what offerings you have, what learning solutions are in place, pulling from those things, building upon them, making changes that cater to the needs of your target audience? And that requires some adaptability, being able to unlearn some things as well as learn new things. And that goes back to that adaptability quotient, which is not always high for everyone just because we're in learning and development. Promote a digital learning culture, adapt to technology. And again, that's also going to speak to how we are staying abreast and keeping current with what's out there, other efficiencies with AI. Level up your skills. Other than a course like this, we have things like podcasts. We have the ability to ask AI, how do I leverage AI better? Why not ask AI? Just like if I have a friend who has, if we go back to the 5 love languages, I want to cater to your needs. I want to cater to how you best receive recognition, receive love, receive friendship. Ask them, ask AI, how do I use you better? Build your credibility. And so, again, something that speaks to how are you building trust and credibility for your learning team? Are you building upon the data, using learning data and analytics to prove your worth, to prove the impact that you're making? Are you having the conversations that speak to the trust you're building with the relationship so they recognize you mean business. You're serious about tapping into what I need in my business area for my staff. That's building credibility, as well as taking back to the folks that you're servicing. Hey, we heard about this need over in this area. Let's connect some dots. Let's do some alignment. We found out in another organization they're doing so and so and so and so. So how are you tapping into that and sharing what the latest and greatest is, what some of those trends are to speak to your credibility as that L&D professional and resource. So a few things there to build upon. That is actually going to do it for us. I thank you all for the time, and I applaud you all being here and the steps you're taking to really look at what you can do to tap into not just advancing AI, but also recognizing what are some roadblocks and holdups when it comes to the ability and the willingness to change and take on the trending best practices, as well as speak to what you want to unlearn and what new things you want to learn. Oftentimes, that change management, big things are going to be with the fear, the uncertainty, or thinking there's a loss of power. And if you can tap into how to address those by understanding the true need and the root of resistance, those are a couple of key areas that can help you when it comes to being successful with navigating the future.
Such a great session. Thank you so much, Esther. That was fascinating. I think we all learned a lot. Thank you.
You are so welcome. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.